Gender Theory Lesson 4. All right, we're back with the same boys. We've got Mr. Max Carson of Dowling Catholic. He's one of the coordinators of our Oop Feed 'em program, which you are familiar with, I'm sure.
That's right.
He's also qualified to talk on matters philosophical and theological, as he possesses degrees in both. We also have the Mr. Walter Pugh of Sacred Heart Catholic School, who has a degree in philosophy and is probably more qualified than me to talk about bioethics. So we are going to talk today about more gender theory and, to your benefit, the last discussion on gender theory that we're going to have. So you can look forward to moving on to cloning, GMOs, and aliens, which is somewhat more fun to talk about. But first, we must finish our thoughts. So what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about relativism every time. The mind, whether the body or mind can be separate from the person, and what do we do when someone we know is struggling with their gender identity? What do we do? All right, we're going to talk about all of those. So, remember, relativism is the belief there's no absolute truth. The belief that there is no absolute truth is a claim that is absolute, so clearly the idea of relativism is ridiculous. Right? Because if there is nothing which is absolutely true, then there is one thing that is absolutely true, that there is nothing which is absolutely true. So it's ridiculous. Now, what I mean by all of this relativism talk is to say it's ridiculous to say that what's true for you isn't necessarily true for me. Everyone has their own truth. Let everyone do their own thing. Because some things are just objective. All right, so that's what I mean by this. All right, remember, God loves everyone. All right, all of the baptized people are God's children. Bob the cat distracts Walter. And finally, that God loves everyone, no one's ever abandoned by God, etc. So, main idea, we're going to talk about two things. Is the person separate from the body? And beyond that, what do we do as caring Catholics for our friends who are experiencing gender dysphoria? So, first up, is the person separate from the person's body? Right. Here's some stuff from St. Thomas Aquinas, the foremost doctor of the church. There's a bunch of pictures of him around our school. If you read this slide, which you're doing right now, I hope, and not just screwing around doing something else while you listen to my droning on voice, you sense the words on the screen, and at the same time you understand their meaning. Right? You read and sense and understand their meaning all at once. Right? St. Thomas didn't use a screen, he used a book, but this fact of human experience led St. Thomas to conclude that the body is not separate from the person. But he concluded that the body is essential to the person, that the body is part of the person. Here's a quote. "It is one and the same man who is conscious both that he understands and that he senses. But one cannot sense without a body, therefore the body must be some part of a man." Right? St. Thomas argues that the body is part of you. Right? Because you understand with your mind, but you sense with your body, and that it's an intrinsic part of you. And that if I were to separate you from your body, it wouldn't work, right? If I cut your head off and make your body not work, you don't work. All right? That the body is part of who you are, is what St. Thomas argues. So I think there's a looming question here about gender dysphoria and transgenderism. Can you, as a person, be different than your body? All right? Can you be born obviously male and yet be, as a person, female? Is that possible? That's the question. Because if it's possible, then transgenderism and gender theory are good. And if it's not possible, then they're ridiculous. All right? And now I use that philosophically, not, to be offensive or mean or anything. But I want to pose to our, let's call them a panel of experts, because I don't know what else to call them, the question that, is it possible that the person can be separate from their body?
So, great question, Mr. Fernholz.
I am full of them. I'm full of other things too, but we won't talk about that.
So let me tell you, I would say, no. It is not possible that the person is separate from their body. Let's say, okay, I have my friend Walter here, and I punch him in the face. Bam. He would say, "Ow, that hurts me."
Yes, I would.
Right? Okay. Yeah, right. He wouldn't say, "That hurt my body, but it didn't hurt me." No one has ever said that in MMA. No one has ever said that in a street fight, whatever. Like, no, ow, that hurts me, right? And so that's something to the person of Walter that I have hurt by punching him. Or if I say, hey, Walter, I think your glasses are dumb. And, okay, Walter loves his glasses.
Some might argue that his glasses are dumb.
And some may not. I'm a big fan of Walter's glasses, actually. They're awesome glasses.
That's alright. You don't have to lie. It's okay.
Okay. I really go to confession. So anyway,
Some might say, Walter, you look stupid. Your glasses are dumb.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you. All right. And see, right now, Walter's like, ouch, that hurts my feelings.
I'm
That
a little
hurts me.
sad now.
That hurts me.
Did I hurt you, Walter?
If you were being for real, yes, but
Good.
no.
And so there's something of that too, where it's like, he wouldn't say, oh, that hurt my inner self, or oh, that hurt my soul. No, he just says, oh, that hurts me. Just as if he would, if I were to punch him, he would say, oh, that hurts me. So we see that there's something in our common language and just how we talk normally that we do really believe that our body and our mind are two things that make up the person, which is the whole.
So it sounds like you're saying that the person's body is not separate from the person, right? If you punch
Right.
somebody, it's not, oh, you hurt my body. No, it's you hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what? Okay, you say that, right? But of course people say you hurt me, right? There's some sort of thing in our language which identifies our body with ourselves, but language doesn't determine reality, right? Do you have any sort of evidence or argument that, like, your body is part of you beyond just the argument that, well, the English language sort of assumes it?
Great question.
It is a great question that I don't have an answer to.
That's a great question. I want to say that, yeah, there is a good reason for that.
And
I'm just like on the spot right now, so that's fun.
welcome to bioethics. So
Okay, let's.
I would argue perhaps that when one experiences something, right, you experience lots of things. You experience what it's like to be sleepy. When you wake up in the morning, you experience the feeling of the warm shower. When you get in the shower, you experience what it feels like to wash your hands with soap and water for 20 seconds to avoid the coronavirus, which you all do. All right? You experience these things, and you're not saying, my body experiences it, right? No, you're saying, I experience it. I know what it's like to wake up. I know what it's like to take a shower. I know what it's like to wash my hands. I know what it's like. I can describe it. I experience it. Me. Right? Not just my body. I'm not just some, like, formless soul that inhabits a squishy robot. No, it's me. I'm me. I know what it's like to feel water on my face or my hands, right? I know what it's like. Purely from my own experience. I know that my body is part of me. Right? Does that seem fair?
That seems fair. So the difference between your argument and my argument is that I was arguing off of something of, like what you were saying, linguistics, English language, whatever. But you are saying that in these experiences that we have, we do say, like, I know what it's like to play baseball and to feel that ball come off the end of the bat.
I mean,
I know what that feels like.
I only played first grade t-ball, so I don't, but yes, sure.
But yeah, like, something to that effect is you're arguing from an experiential point of view.
It's the same argument that Thomas is making, or it's the same claim that Thomas is making, or at least in this part of the Summa. Like, he's like saying, because you have to, like, in some way interact with the world, like, that part of you that interacts with the world is as much a part of you as the part that intuits the world, that reasons about the world. But you have to have some way of, like, taking that in. And the part of you that takes it in, that experiences, is, like you both were getting at, is as much a part of you as the part that reasons about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the input, if you want to be kind of base about it, it's like the input for a computer. Like, it's the keyboard and the mouse, the webcam of a computer.
high definition 720p, which I bought at Walmart a month before the coronavirus pandemic. You're welcome.
Before the coronavirus pandemic.
Listen, I think ahead. All right.
Like, really far.
Listen,
Too far ahead.
shut up. So, it seems by experience that a person's body is part of them, right? You don't experience reality absent from your body. You can't experience anything without your body, really, that you know of. I mean, you can, right? Like your soul could experience something in the absence of your body, but have you ever felt something without your body? No. All right, your body is part of who you are.
I mean, yeah, you just said it. Have you ever experienced something without your body? No.
Right.
That just kind of gets part of that.
So I would argue that your body, right, is essential to your identity. And your soul matters, your mind matters, your brain matters, all these things matter. But, we know, for example, that, like, if you break someone's brain, they stop working, right? That, like, their brain is part of who they are, that they can't be them without their brain. That's part of their body, right? That we know from base experience that your body is part of who you are. Who's the guy, cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. Rene Descartes. Descartes argues that, like, that you can know that you exist because you experience things, right? You might be a robot or a figment of my imagination. I might be on drugs and hallucinating everything, but I know I exist because I experience things, right? I think that's fair to say that, like, I can know things because I experience them. And without my body, I can't. All right. Now, think about that, if you would. I also want to take just a brief second to reiterate that many of the things we talk about are very difficult. The popular opinion of the world might be one thing. It might align with the truth or it might not. But we must try and find the truth. What is real? What is reality? What is in fact? Even if it goes against what we feel or what we initially believe or what our perception is. Right? I was convinced, partially by the writings of St. Thomas Aquinas, that your body is part of you. Right? I was convinced by it. I didn't believe it at first. Right? So I think you need to think about it. I think you need to sit down and actually give yourself to thought. With the coronavirus pandemic going around, you can sit at home in your bedroom and just listen to Spotify and play Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 7, or whatever on your Xbox 12. No, okay, I'm joking. I know what video games are. I play them all the time. But, you can just distract yourself with all sorts of things to not actually encounter life's deepest questions. But you should think about this. Can you be separate from your body? Is your body different than you? Well, your body is clearly part of you. Try and come up with an example of how it's not. Right? Sit down in the quiet of your bedroom and think about it. Right? You need to give it some honest, quiet thought. All right. Now, beyond that, I want to take just sort of a logical example here. All right. There is a group of people, albeit small, who identify themselves by the name transabled. That is not a name I gave them. That is the name they give themselves. People who say, well, I truly don't have a left leg, and so I need someone to cut it off so that I can be myself. Right? Now, generally, bioethics, right? A medical doctor will not amputate your left leg simply because you want it amputated if it's functioning properly. All right? These sort of people, doctors have an ethical obligation to not just cut off their legs, even though they say to the doctor that it will make them feel better. And this is fairly clear, right? That as a doctor, you can't just cut off someone's leg because they say cut it off, right? Can this sort of idea be applied to the idea of sexual reassignment surgery? What do you think?
We're talking about the transabled case, right? We're talking about a body part being cut off because they feel like they would be more themselves without it there. And I think something that you said, an argument that they could give, kind of touches on that relativism notion that we spoke on earlier, was that I don't believe my right leg exists, so cut it off. Well, how can you cut off something that doesn't exist? Right? So we already see a lack of logic, a lack of reason in that.
Now, I think to be fair, a man who wants to undergo sexual reassignment surgery would not be arguing that his sexual organ does not exist, right? He'd simply be saying, like, the real me should not have this.
Mm-hmm. Right. So what we have described already, we have proven that it is true that our bodies and our minds make us the person that we are. Right? We are our bodies and our minds put together. And so if we are our bodies and our minds, but then we do something to lessen one of the two, the body or the mind, then we become something less of who we were created to be.
Do you think, Walter, that a medical doctor, in the case of this, who call themselves transabled, do you think a medical doctor could reasonably, ethically, just cut off a person's leg if they ask him to cut off a functioning leg? Do you think that would be an ethical procedure for a surgeon to perform?
No, I guess no. Clear, like I would say no. I'm just
Why?
trying to reason this out. Because it would seem like you're removing a perfectly like healthy limb. It seems like you're removing something that, although according to the person, ought not be there.
In fact, should be.
In fact, should be there for every other reason.
It seems to me that the purpose of medicine is to promote the health of the individual and to like treat and cure illness and disease. Right? That seems to be the purpose of medicine. And so it seems that the amputation of a functioning leg does not treat or cure an illness and does not promote one's health. It doesn't. And we looked previously in lesson 2 at some scientific studies about gender reassignment surgery. And so here's a question, right? Let's say a man desires sexual reassignment surgery and the removal or the changing of his sexual organs. Does that, cure a disease? Well, no, surely not. And does that truly promote his health? Well, in the studies we looked at, it doesn't, for example, reduce suicide rates. And so it doesn't seem to promote mental health, and it certainly doesn't seem to promote physical health. Right? And so since that's what medicine is for, the promotion of health and the treatment of disease, is it ethical for a doctor to perform a procedure that doesn't do those things?
No, is a logical conclusion. Right.
Right. I think the logical conclusion is no, even if it's perhaps unpopular.
Right. I could see like a possible objection in that maybe like someone's sexuality is perhaps like a little bit more integral to who they are as like a human person than maybe they would consider like their leg or their arm or their fingers. I guess I would disagree with that. I would say like your legs and your fingers are just as integral as like your sexuality. Like they make you a fuller like human person by having those things. You're lesser like philosophically or metaphysically. You're lesser when you're missing digits or when you're missing an arm. And so I would say like even though it might seem like gender reassignment is almost sympathetic or to somebody or like helping somebody, it would seem to be diminishing them. Just looking at it physically, it's diminishing them physically by removing or changing something that's there. And I wouldn't say simply because they desire it or simply because they believe it, but because it means that they're actually less of a person by having what's natural to them like mutilated, or I guess maybe mutilation sounds like a harsh term, but I think that's the reality, like or something like physically changed that is by nature properly functional. like that is already like is healthy by all other reason, other than the subjective person believing that it isn't.
And it's certainly true that someone can believe something which they feel very strongly, but is not necessarily true. We know very many people, we've talked about this before in class, who believe that vaccines are a conspiracy by big pharma for the government to poison children or to poison children into generating revenue for drugs. It's not the case.
Right.
Right? We know that many people believe very strongly that the earth is flat, but it's not. We know many people believe very strongly certain things which are not necessarily the truth.
Right.
And that can even apply to oneself. One can very strongly believe, I think, that one is something, even if they're not. Okay. So, I want you to think about this. But beyond this, we're Catholics. What should we do for people we know or people we encounter who are struggling with their gender identity? All right, the National Catholic Bioethics Center says, it is clear that those with gender dysphoria suffer greatly and must be treated with great compassion and sympathy. All right, we must always be with them in their difficulties and help them make truly therapeutic choices, things which will actually help them, which may or may not be the thing which they desire. All right. I don't know if you've ever encountered someone who's a friend or an acquaintance who's ever struggled with gender identity or sexuality, perhaps, but how do you think as Catholics we are called to help, out of true Christian charity, those people who are struggling with their gender identity?
The Catechism is very clear on this. Catechism of the Catholic Church, I highly recommend to read it. There's a lot of common questions that
You've got
everyone
like
has.
800 hours sitting in your bedroom. What else are you going to read?
Right. Got nothing better to do. So the Catechism of the Catholic Church really answers a lot of these kinds of questions and many more. But one of that that's very clear on is this question right here. How do we act towards people with gender dysphoria, or they're identifying themselves as gay or lesbian and they struggle with that? The Catholic Church is very clear that we respond to them in compassion, sensitivity, and respect. Just like every person, no matter where they're at in life, is given this dignity that they be treated as someone created in the image and likeness of God, right? And so with someone who's a creation of God, there is that respect, there is that like notion of this person in front of you, this person who's struggling with this, is just as a gift from God to you as you are to them. Someone created by God and someone who is infinitely loved by God. And so that holds a weight of loving this other person. That holds a weight of responsibility on our end to respond with love, compassion, sensitivity, and respect. It's about caring about the person, not proving that you're right and they're wrong. That's never the way you want to go, but loving.
I think you're right. I think we saw in our last class when you watched the video that I assigned to watch, which I'm sure you watched. That many of us can just try and say, well, I'm right, you're wrong, and here's why. And there's some merit to being right, perhaps, but I think we have a duty to love them and try and bring about what's best for them, not prove that I'm right. Right? I think that's fair. Do you have any sort of closing remarks for us?
Well, I guess with regard to accompaniment, I think maybe there can be like maybe a desire to there can be a desire to like kind of control another person, like to say like I know what's best for you, not in the sense of like willing their good, but in the sense of like no, like you need to do this. And so there's a certain abandonment that we have to take along with like our duty of charity to say that in the end, regardless of what their choice is, like we still have the commandment to love them, and so we have to in the end abandon like our own aims, no matter how good they are, like for whatever the freedom will be for that person to choose in. Our duty remains to present to them the love of Jesus Christ, the fullness of the truth. But it might be a good practice for us to think about what it might be like to abandon though, without kind of reacting in like a prideful way either, of like kind of damaging the relationship that between you and the other person, maybe for the sake of just winning an argument rather than for the sake of like willing their good.
I think that's good. So I want you to think about this sort of discussion. All right. I want you to take a look at this slide. All right. You can find lots of resources, things we've referenced. All right. We've talked about the National Catholic Bioethics Center. They have many logical and reasonable arguments about this sort of thing and many other things. All right. There's an article here about gender theory. There's an article from Christina Mean and Trent Horn, and then some argument from dualism. So I want you to take a look at these things, and then I want you to go to OnCampus, go to the Assignments tab, and participate in discussion following the prompt that you find there. So thank you very much for listening to us talk about the issues surrounding the church and gender theory and gender dysphoria. This is the end of week 2 and the end of our formal study of gender theory. Please feel free to email me with any questions you might have. All right, know that I'm available from 1 to 3 p.m. Tuesday through Friday if you need questions answered. And I'll see you next week. They might not. Good luck.
But you can see me again with Miss Magruder every day from 3 p.m. to whenever the prayer session is over with. Could go longer with the Rotary or shorter with the Divine Mercy Chaplet. Look at the Maroon Crew Minute, and you'll see our prayer schedule for this week and the weeks to come, for however long we're in quarantine. And accept the link to come pray with us. Because do you have anything better to do than pray?
No.
No, not at all.
All right.